is that COVID-19 can be taken and looked at as an opportunity for us to get our students with visual impairments on a faster track with technology.
Welcome to a special episode of The Hummingbird, a place where we meet interesting people within the blind and low vision community to talk about their careers, goals, and accomplishments. This show is brought to you by Sunu, makers of the Sunu Band smartwatch. Visit Sunu at sunu.com to learn more. I'm your guest host, Fernando Albertorio, and we hope that you, our listener, are doing well and staying healthy. There's no doubt about it. We're living in an unprecedented time. Our shared reality is sending shockwaves to our hearts, families, and within our communities. There's so much happening so quickly as we all try to do the best to keep ourselves safe and the people around us safe as well. We're here with Cody Laplante and Katrina Best. Cody, Katrina, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hi, thank you so much.
Great, well, I hope you guys are doing well. Cody is a teacher of the visually impaired and is based in Maryland. And Katrina is an orientation and mobility specialist licensed within the state of Florida. Both are educators and experts in assistive technologies. And I've known Cody and Katrina for about 3 years now, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're here to have a conversation with you as professionals and educators and experts in assistive technologies and how things are rapidly changed within this health crisis of COVID-19. And I wanted to kind of kick things off by having you tell our audience, what do you guys do as educators?
So I personally, I am a teacher of the visually impaired, currently working for Baltimore County Public Schools. I was an assistive technology or a technology instructor at the Maryland School for the Blind for about 3 years before that. And then, we'll get into the company, but on the side, Katrina and I run a assistive technology company.
Cool.
Yeah. And Fernando, I am a teacher of the visually impaired and orientation and mobility specialist within the sunny state of Florida. And we've already started transitioning over to e-learning for our students with visual impairments.
But you briefly mentioned about the new work that you're doing. I know that you're starting up a new company. Sounds very exciting, and from what I've learned, it sounds very cool. It's called IT, right?
It's spelled EYE. T. It's a play on IT, instructional technology. Cody and I were just like brainstorming names. We're like, what can we do? But really, we started this about 3 years ago. We ran into each other at ATIA, 2017? And we were just sitting outside of a hotel at the conference and just sharing with each other about how the world is nothing like what we thought it would be when we were sitting in assistive technology courses in college, and just getting out and realizing, oh my goodness, there's all of these individuals that are working with the visually impaired that don't realize all of the assistive technology that they can be teaching the individual with the visual impairment and thus helping propel them into a successful career. So that's kind of where this company was birthed about 3 years ago. And then I'll let Cody kind of share how where we are right now happened.
Yeah. So our original idea was to create courses for professionals working in the field of visual impairments, whether that's TVIs, O&Ms, even general education classroom teachers that just happen to have a student that's blind in their classroom. And really coming to the point where we want to provide quality training that you don't have to spend a lot of money on or go to, get another master's degree to get. And something that somebody can go to as a resource as technology is changing. And we saw this huge gap in the field where this wasn't available, and we kind of are brainstorming and going along that direction. How can we provide that? How can we fill that gap? So right now we are working on developing paid courses, which are in the future. But currently we have a YouTube channel, which we just started our TVIs at Home series, where we go over all of these systems to provide remote instruction to students with visual impairments. We also developed a Facebook group, and we have a free NVDA cheat sheet that we made. So any way that we can provide resources to our colleagues in the field, so that it's easier to stay up to date on all this technology.
That's fantastic, especially me, from our point as Sunu as a company creating technologies. When we work with organizations and we work with the instructors, the O&Ms and the TVIs, I mean, they're always interested in knowing what's out there, what's the latest in technology. Yeah. Organizations do have a hard time keeping up with the latest gadgets, with the latest apps and technologies. So I could definitely see from an entrepreneurial side, that this type of service that you're creating and will be delivering right now is actually very well needed.
Like, that's another reason IT was born 3 years ago, is because we realized everything is hard copy, right? Like BOP, building on patterns. I don't mean to throw that out there, but it's like all hard copy. Like, we need to move towards Braille displays. And like, can we get BOP on a Braille display? Like, can students do this from home? Like, we need to be moving towards that pattern. And I think one of the benefits, and Cody, I know, agrees with me on this, we've had some discussions, is that COVID-19 can be taken and looked at as an opportunity for us to get our students with visual impairments on a faster track with technology.
Really great point, Katrina. Especially right now, we know that the COVID-19 health crisis with the coronavirus, a lot of services, organizations, schools, programs are for the blind and visually impaired are now shifting to a new normal. This new normal is basically aimed at helping alleviate the current health crisis. We've heard already the flattening the curve or extending out the curve so we don't overwhelm our healthcare system. And it's primarily centered around the social distancing. So, as you mentioned, a lot of the services for the blind professionals are working in a way that it's itinerant. There's a lot of face-to-face contact. The programs do require a lot of person-to-person interaction on site. Sometimes you're traveling to a person's home. So all this is now turned over, and yet here you're saying that there's a big opportunity here for IT and also for the professional community to embrace this new normal of digital remote first.
Regarding orientation and mobility, I know that there's been some experts in the field that have pumped out some wonderful resources like Chris Tabb, some other people. It's really scary. I'm working on a script for O&Ms at home, and I'm constantly banging my head against the wall because we have administrators and bosses, right, that are not from the background of vision. And so some of them think that we can just have the parent follow them around with a cell phone camera and videotape our student crossing the street. Whoa, is that not like heart racing, like inducing? I'm about ready to have a heart attack just thinking about that, because there's so many things that go into orientation and mobility. If we, it's really, I'm really scrolling through a lot of Facebook pages right now. I'm looking at what other orientation mobility specialists are doing, and I'm making sure that, hey, when I'm getting ready to write the script, that what my ideas are and what other people's ideas are, that they align with the code of ethics on ACVREP's website for comms, and B, that they're in line with the curriculum, such as TAPS, where there's a guided curriculum for students with visual impairment.
So, like right now we're seeing the shift to digital, and
yes,
what you're saying is like we have to be careful, but we also have an opportunity.
Yes, we do.
Orientation and mobility is something that you're not going to all of a sudden have a parent or a sibling, do this with a cell phone camera and then Skyping in your O&M or Zoom conferencing with your O&M to get that valuable instruction and technique down.
Exactly.
However, and if I understand you correctly, you guys at IT are developing curriculum activities that can refocus a bit the curriculum to the new setting
Yes.
while still maintaining to the standard.
Absolutely. And we're looking for resources, and specifically speaking about the O&M curriculum, for O&Ms at home, which we haven't launched yet, but we're hoping to do it within the next couple weeks. I'm looking at different resources that are available to orientation and mobility specialists that are on a budget, that are A, free for families and O&Ms, and B, can be provided in the home setting in a safe, controlled, with that keyword being controlled, environment, because that seems to be the importance. And in orientation and mobility, so many things are about teaching students how to move and interact in an uncontrolled environment.
Maybe reinforcing. Maybe we're taking a reinforcement approach. Could be learning how to engage on those techniques for navigating hallways, for example.
We talk so much about kind of what our direction is going to be, especially now. And I think the one conversation that Katrina and I had recently was that there's so much in orientation and mobility that can happen outside of let's go and do a route, right? Some of this involves, concepts where you are, like where are you in space, where are you in your neighborhood, how can we Google search different things on the internet to figure out where we're going to go, and these are the things that I think when I look at my students in their orientation and mobility instruction, that sometimes those things get left behind, because the focus is let's go and figure out how to do a route. And now I think what we're looking at is the opportunity for us to take those skills that sometimes get left behind. And now that we're, cooped inside for however long this is going to be, now we can elaborate on those skills, which is, I think, a really exciting shift. And it might remind us, there is more to orientation and mobility or anything. There is more to Braille instruction or technology instruction than just what we do every day, So it's kind of just, as we get kind of thrown around, we get to re-examine what we do in the field and how we do it.
And that's an exciting point that you bring up. I mean, like in our case at Sunu, as a technology company, we're seeing an opportunity to engage with the specialists who are at home, to learn about technologies. I was wondering if you guys can just kind of dive in a little bit deeper, because this has to do quite a bit with IT in terms of the instruction that you're providing through your platform.
And we believe that at IT we can produce something that it's easy, good information that you can get just from an internet browser.
Very good, very good. And it kind of, I'd like to shift a little bit gear here. It's still kind of keeping on the same ideas around and the thread around O&M, but now applying it to the end user, the individual. Myself, I'm low vision. And, living in this new normal has been kind of interesting for me, especially when I've had to go to the grocery store and I need to find an item and I hold it up close so that I can read it. However, given the current health situation, I've gotten a lot of nasty stares and weird looks when I put it back. And I'm just trying to read the item. So I've kind of developed a little bit of hacks and tricks with my phone. I'm sure, other folks are kind of making their own hacks. So, I guess for you guys is, what do you suggest? Any advice for those of us who are low vision or blind when we're navigating through this time? What would you guys suggest?
If I knew the folks at Uber or Lyft, I would love to see Uber, Lyft, or another ride sharing application make it priority. Okay, make it a priority to pick up those individuals with a physical limitation that impedes them from driving to and from the grocery store. Because first, we need to look at how ride-sharing applications, grocery delivery services are now inundated with people that could get public transportation, or could drive, or could have a family member pick up things for them. But so many of these options that orientation and mobility specialists are used to teaching, right? Public transportation, right? Or ride sharing applications. Now, your public transportation may not be working depending on where you live, or it might be working, but you might be too afraid that you might be within like less than 6 feet, right, of somebody that's come in contact with the
You don't want to
coronavirus.
you don't want to be exposed, and again,
Exactly.
we're following the directions from what our local government is telling us, which is to stay at home,
Yes.
isolate or self quarantine, and so the option of jumping on public transport is becoming less and less of an option and a deal. And
Yes.
that trip to the supermarket is now changing.
That's one thing I think that should happen. Another thing, we have a grocery store in Florida called Publix, and it doesn't matter the name, but some grocery store chains, I guess, have like their own like Instacart where they start delivering groceries. I would like them to make that as well, to say, when you're signing up for it, whether you have to call the grocery store, like on Sanibel Island, you have to call them and like ask them to deliver to you. If you have to call them and say, hey, I have a physical impairment that impedes me from driving and impedes me from operating a vehicle, so I should be a priority client, right? So I'd like to see that happen. I'd also like to see, when you go into the grocery store, one of the things that I was listening to from a doctor last night, a family physician, who put a video out on how do you grocery shop and stay safe. Did you know that the coronavirus lives on cardboard for up to 2 hours, I believe? It was either 2 days or 2 hours. Same with plastic. So what they showed is that when you go into the grocery store, first of all, you should go in with a list. So same thing for individuals with visual impairments. Go in with a list. Don't just go, I'm going to go have fun in the grocery store, wander around and touch everything. You should go in with a list, know exactly what you want. And then you should use an app where it's either a barcode scanner or you're zooming in, like you said, to see the items. And bring hand sanitizer with you. I always carry my wipes with me. I always carry my Clorox wipes, because grocery stores are running out of that now. And I'll wipe stuff down. And do that. And then it doesn't matter if these people are looking at you crazy.
So like, shop linear, be very, very directive when you go to the store.
Yes.
Bring the hand sanitizer, and again, use the technology, use the apps.
Yeah.
Whether it's from the store or whether it's the pickup app like Instacart, to avoid going into the store, or basically use your gadgets that you have. You can be in and out quick.
And another thing that I heard was, if you do have delivery like Instacart or Shipt or something, and they bring you your groceries, don't let them inside your house. And you might be saying, why? Well, it's not just a safety issue anymore. It's because they could be carrying the coronavirus on them. So you want them to put your groceries outside your front door and let you know.
The app will let you know. The app will allow the person to tell the person receiving the groceries where they left it. So that way a person who's blind or vision impaired could readily locate their groceries.
As somebody with low vision myself, the other thing that I do, especially when I go into the grocery store and I'm looking for something very specific, is, I mean, we all know in low vision that, like, if you're familiar with something, familiarity is the biggest tool when you have low vision, right? If you're looking for something that's unfamiliar, it's, for me at least, 100 times harder. So I picked up a strategy when I was still in school by Robin Clark, who's still in the field over at Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind. And she always used to tell me, you stand back, take in as much as you can, and then do that systematic search pattern and start from the top down and then over, and looking for whatever you remember about that product. So, if you're looking for Ziploc bags, most Ziploc bags have blue boxes, right? So if you're looking for a specific brand of Ziploc bags, well, then I'm looking for a blue box, and keeping that in my mind, especially now when I go to the grocery store, because I'm like, I don't really want to be touching everything, just like you said, Fernando.
Yeah. One thing that it's helped me a lot is, like, I memorize. I mean, I'm very good with directions, or like keeping my orientation. So I memorize the store. So I know
very good
are and at least relatively. So at least I don't have to rely on trying to read the aisles, names, and anything. I kind of more or less know how grocery stores are laid out. I can quickly find the Ziploc bags or
Mm-hmm.
paper towels, etc.
Yeah.
Very good advice. I know this is going to be a topic for another show, but recently I've had a few friends who are blind share some very scary stories, interesting stories too. But unfortunately, things that are happening where they were outside at the grocery store maybe 2 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden someone grabs them, tries to basically help them. People with good intentions, they want to be helpful, yet I think that we need to do a bit more to educate everybody around some of the etiquette and some of the norms about how you approach someone who is visually impaired and when you want to be helpful, and what's the best way to do that. I've had a few friends of mine who have been kind of thrust and pushed around or grabbed while they're doing groceries, and normally it's just a pet peeve, or it's kind of an inconvenience during normal times, but especially now it's been kind of scary for them. uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I was wondering if you can chat more a little bit about what people can do around these situations.
Absolutely. First comes to my mind a couple things. Number one is, as a sighted, so these are some tips for the sighted folks. And then I'm going to give some tips for the individuals with visual impairments. Sighted folks, I know that you want to be helpful. Oh my goodness. But first of all, two things. You need to think about, are you a carrier, even if you're not showing symptoms? Is that individual with a visual impairment a carrier, even though they might not be showing symptoms? And if you still really want to help because the person looks like they need help, you don't grab them, ever. You go up to the individual and say, you look a little lost. Would you like some assistance? And then that individual will either say yes or no, individual with a visual impairment. At which case you do not, as the sighted individual, you do not, or the human guide, maybe you have a low vision yourself and you're helping somebody with no light perception. You do not grab that person. That person is going to grab onto you. I repeat, you don't grab them. That person is going to grab onto you. So you simply take your arm, and they're usually pretty good about explaining it. Individuals with visual impairments that have help getting around, they're usually good at saying yes, and then they'll tell you what they want. But you put your arm so that it's somewhat rigid next to theirs, and then they're going to find your arm with their palm, and they're going to slide up until they get to a little bit by your elbow. When they are done, when you have led them somewhere, that gives them the power, okay? It's in their hands. The person with the visual impairment should have the power at all times to let go of you. Now, if you're an individual with no light perception or a visual impairment, and you're faced in a situation where somebody comes up to you and grabs you, you need to bring that arm that they've grabbed as close to your body as possible. And with your other hand, grab their wrist and say, no, thank you, and pull down on their wrist. What that does is, by bringing your arm up, it gives you control to grab their wrist and just pull it down. That is really important. And you can just say, no, thank you. Or you can say, yes, I would like some assistance, after you pull their wrist down, but I need to hold on to you.
First of all, it's a matter of educating people.
It
People
is.
by nature want to be helpful. We'll assume good intentions. Everyone wants to be helpful. But don't assume that just because you see someone who's walking around with a white cane or with a guide dog that they're helpless.
Absolutely.
Or they're completely clueless.
Absolutely.
They're out there. They've been trained. They've taken orientation ability. They know what they're doing. So don't assume, number one. And I guess the big takeaway here is to ask, how can I help you? That puts the power on the individual who's visually impaired to decide exactly how they want to be helped. And again, asking permission, even if you want to do sighted guide, which is the technique that you described as sighted guide, is, may I be your sighted guide? How can I help you? And allow the person to lead and control the situation.
Definitely. I mean, everybody's getting tossed around, and I think that even more so now, people that struggle, I mean, not struggle, but, really have to think about their independence now have to think about it even more. So I think it's just one of the things that, welcome to our new reality. And we're all still trying to figure it out,
We're all trying to figure it out. In fact, I've had a few users tell me that the Sunu band has been helping them maintain their social distance when in the public place.
I love the feature where you can feel on your wrist when the line is moving, and with the Sunu band. And back a year or two ago, I used a Sunu band with a client, and he loved, I mean, this is a little different. We were at a bar and he could tell if the bartender was ignoring him because he could feel her walk past. But I absolutely think that the Sunu band is a great way for individuals to preview their environment in conjunction with the cane. And I think, Fernando, you had mentioned when we were talking at some point, you had mentioned on a previous conversation that Sunu was able to do tandem with an instructor, an O&M specialist, so they could feel what the client was feeling through their band. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes, it's actually being used at an organization in New Hampshire called Future Insight. And I could put the link down at the description. But the Sunu tether allows the student to work with their orientation mobility specialist and their instructor, so that the instructor can feel exactly what the student is sensing with the Sunu band. So to help facilitate instruction, so that way the attention is on the lesson and not on what the technology is doing.
I love that feature, and I just have a question about it, about how many feet does the instructor have to stand away from the student for it to work? Do you know?
Well, actually, it really helps with the social distancing. So
that's what I'm wondering.
It can work up to 12 feet.
Wow.
The instructor could be as far as 10 feet or 12 feet, as long as there are no obstructions, like a wall in between you and the student. So if you're working in an open area, or you're outdoors, it's totally fine. You can have that tether still working even up to 10 feet to 12 feet. It works totally fine. Indoors, you just want to watch out between walls. Once you get a wall in between you, then it starts delaying the response, because it's all based on a real-time feedback.
Very good, very good. I can see where that is just a wonderful tool.
I'd love to talk with specialists in the field, especially now that we're all virtual, we're all doing stuff from home. We're preparing a variety of content and learning materials for orientation mobility specialists that they can learn more about Sunu, and also soon developing a certification program where you can also get certified as from Sunu.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of go in on the same thinking about education, Cody. Schools now are remote; they're virtual. Things have changed. What are you seeing on your side in terms of instruction for TBI?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good things that are happening. I think it starts with a lot of confusion. So we see a lot of people saying, "Oh my gosh, I do everything on paper. What do I do?" But I think in the long run, it's a really exciting time because of that. The fact that technology provides so much to our students and to our students that are going to be independent users of technology. And now it's kind of thrusting these professionals who were uncomfortable with technology and saying, hey, guess what? This is the only way to do it now. You have to open up your computer and figure out how to provide service to your student with a computer. And the beautiful thing, especially for me, my personal vision is I want all of my kids and all students with visual impairments to be able to use a computer. And now the shift that we're seeing is, well, if your kids don't know how to use a computer and you're a TBI, I guess that's the first thing you're going to teach them, because then you can't provide service. So it's kind of thrusting us into this place where, what we were doing before is no longer going to work. So I think, beginning with confusion and ending with a little bit of a shift in the field, you're probably in the right direction.
But a lot of opportunities. And as you mentioned, with IT, you mentioned briefly about one of your programs or your courses, TVI at Home. Can you share more about what you guys are doing there and where you envision this, no pun intended, going?
Yeah, yeah. So I love the pun, by the way.
Yes.
But I really like I mean, the vision for TVIs at Home was we were talking about how can we address this COVID-19 pandemic when we started to see the real shift happening. And really, all of the things that we put into TVIs at Home are things that I have used with my students who are Braille readers or screen reader users. So it shows that, hey, guess what? These are systems where, for example, our part one is to provide a system to communicate with your students and their classroom teachers and provide accessible documents through Google Drive, where you have a shared drive with the student and you can pass documents back and forth. That's a system that works now, but it also is a system that I use in my job every day because it's just an easier way to be a TVI. And the really exciting thing about TVIs at Home is that now we have all of these people using these systems that we're creating, that we're showing in TVIs at Home, that hopefully when we come back for next school year, that will be the new way that they do things, because they realize, hey, this is an easier and more efficient way to service students with visual impairments.
Very good, very exciting. And I think that you guys are really well poised to take advantage of the opportunities of the shift to remote and virtual, especially with the programs that you're offering at IT.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we hope so. We hope that what we provide is helpful.
I've seen a couple emails go through about some potential proposals that could delay special education across the country. Suggesting that parents and everyone in the community get activated against these proposed changes to the law, or what Congress is bringing down for the relief packages for this COVID-19. Can you share a little bit more about what's happening and where we are with this?
Where we are right now is really just a request for a recommendation, which is I've been told is a compromise when they want to put something into a bill, and a lot of people don't agree with it. They say, okay, well, we'll just ask for a report, and then what will have to happen is, we're still far away from regulations being waived, because now if the Secretary of Education comes down and says we want A, B, and C regulation waived, Congress still has to pass legislation to actually enact that. So, positives and negatives. Positives is that there are all of the regulations in IDEA are currently still in place, and there has to be more legislation to waive them. The negatives being that really it's not the best situation to be in, because IDEA regulations still are at risk, more so than they were before the pandemic.
Wow. Quite a lot there. And tips and advice for parents right now during this time. I was wondering if you can share any thoughts there for the parents.
Get involved in organizations. That's where, honestly, all of the information that I just shared with you, I get from emails from professional organizations and community advocacy organizations. And those organizations, part of their goal is to educate us all on what's happening in the Senate, because they're and the House of Representatives, because they're the ones down there in DC doing all the work. So as much as you can, get involved in organizations like NOAA and NAPV, National Association for Parents of Visual Impairments. Those organizations really do a great job of providing a voice for our community, and as much as you can be involved in those organizations, that's how you're going to stay informed.
Wanted to add to that is check your child's IEP. Look to see what technology is put on that IEP, because the school district has to provide that to your child during this time.
That's
absolutely
great thought.
Absolutely.
Very good thought. And again, there are organizations, that are still working very hard, even in this time that we're all remote, working from home. Their staff is doing an amazing job. They're providing services. One example is MAPV here, the Massachusetts Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I received the emails of the amazing job that their staff is doing, providing services still keeping their programs, shifted to remote. And whenever possible, they're providing services to seniors who are living with sight loss and blindness. And so, organizations like MABI are leading the charge, but there are other organizations across the U.S. that are still reshifting their programs. So for parents, the idea is to keep on top, keep in touch with these organizations.
Absolutely.
So we're reaching the end of our show. Any final thoughts and comments for the audience?
I mean, just stay safe and, as much as you can, remotely connect with the people that you love and the people that you care about. And know that even though you're isolated, that we all are isolated. So, as much as you can, keep your mood up, exercise, yes. Do the things that you don't usually have time for when we're not in this situation. And as much as you can, find the silver lining, because, that's all we can do.
We are going to get through it. As a country, we are going to get through it. We have a lot of people who are dedicated. They're working very hard. Our healthcare workers in the hospitals, our nurses, our doctors, and our teachers, especially those educators who are still working a little bit differently, but still on the front line and providing important services to our community. This has been a special episode of The Hummingbird. The Hummingbird is brought to you by Sunu. The Sunu are the creators of the Sunu band, the navigation smartwatch for the blind and low vision. You can learn more about Sunu band at sunu.com. Thank you very much to our listeners. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you on the next show. Have a good night.